For the fourth time in franchise history, the Philadelphia Eagles are headed to the Super Bowl just 5 years after the last one with a new head coach and a new quarterback. What is going on, y'all? Welcome to another edition of the EPA Podcast brought to you by Bleeding Green Nation. Be sure to subscribe to BGN Radio on all pod platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere else you get your shows. If you are new to checking out BGN Radio, be sure to subscribe, rate 5 stars, leave those reviews. Each and every one does help bring Bleeding Green Nation and BGN Radio to more eyes and ears of NFL fans, Eagles fans, especially now during this exciting time locally. Anyway, can't say the same for San Francisco and Dallas and the rest of these guys. I'm your host today, Victor Williams. Be sure to follow me on all social platforms at the Philly Pod. You can do the same for my co-host at half and half _ TPL. He is Shane Haff, and if you are a regular of listening to us for the last however many weeks, you know that we were uber confident in getting to this point. So if you are wondering why there's a lack of, I don't want to say lack of excitement and enthusiasm, it's because we expected to be here, and it's no shock that the Eagles got here. This team is special. They felt special in training camp. They felt special early in the season, and it shouldn't be a shock to anybody that the Eagles have clinched another Super Bowl berth just 5 years removed from the last one. Shane, how's it feel, man? We made it to the big dance. Jalen Hurts in his second year as a true starter. Nick Sirianni in his short time here in Philadelphia. Jeffrey Lurie knows how to pick them, man. He knows how to pick these coaches that get to the Super Bowl in their second year. So I don't for everything that people have to say about Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, this organization wins, and they know how to win, and this year is no different.
Yeah, what I don't want to happen after the Eagles win the Super Bowl in 2 weeks is for Nick Sirianni to say this is the new normal and go on a book tour, us repeat this whole cycle. Maybe the Eagles should just preempt that. You know, Sean Payton just got traded for a first-round pick. Maybe they should trade Nick Sirianni for a first-round pick and hire a new coach, and in 2 years they'll be back in the Super Bowl. Like, is that the plan here?
The plan is to win the Super Bowl every 5 years, leave your head coach, like have them win the Super Bowl, then leave them, and then find a new one and win a ring and just repeat the cycle. That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I would have told you after 2017 that in the next 5 years the Eagles would be in another Super Bowl, but Carson Wentz wouldn't be on the roster, Doug Peterson would not be the coach, like nobody would have believed. Maybe people would have believed that Nick Foles did it or something, because there was a lot of Nick Foles mania, but like, it's just crazy. After the way Chip Kelly left this organization, 8 years ago? Mm-hmm. If I told you that the Eagles would go to 2 Super Bowls with 2 different coaches and 2 different quarterbacks, like nobody would have believed it. It's been a crazy run. The Eagles were in a really bad spot after 2020, and they've reloaded so quickly. And yeah, huge props to Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie and the whole organization for pulling that off.
Yeah, when you look at the turmoil that was left after all that, eating at the time the biggest dead cap hit in history, having no quarterback, bringing in a head coach that was seemingly supposed to fix Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz said, "I don't care who you bring in here, I want out." So Sirianni was handed Jalen Hurts, and they seem to be a match made in heaven to this point. So very, very good vibes right now in the city of Philadelphia. And granted, the NFC Championship game wasn't the barn burner that we had hoped, or maybe that 49ers fans had hoped. I'm pretty sure Eagles fans don't really care how this game had ended. But man, what a drumming the last couple NFC Championship games that the Eagles have been involved in, have been parties for the most part. By the end of it got a little hairy when Christian McCaffrey ran over the entire Eagles defense on the way to the end zone, and you started to think to yourself like, well, maybe they're gonna make this interesting. But they blew it open after the turnover. Josh Johnson can barely get his hands on the ball. That fumble, that was just a drop snap. And I know he doesn't have a lot of snaps this season, so it's hard to fault the guy who was thrown into the fire, but just a very bad mistake at that time. But man, I guess it's a couple days removed from the game now, but oh, my Apple Watch is going off. Sorry, I'm speaking too loud into the watch. But I guess just your general takeaways from the game entirely. I know we wanted it to be a little more interesting, but Brock Purdy goes down. But this is what happens when you put reserve tight ends on one of the premier pass rushers in the league, and Hassan Reddick. 49ers fans, I'll go into my rant about how soft 49ers fans have been about this whole thing after you. But just, I guess, your general feelings, takeaways, initial reactions after the way the Eagles won this game.
This was just such a bizarre game.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we've got the Skycam wire thing with the punt, right?
Yeah.
How is there no video that shows, like, an NFL official in the year 2023 really came on there and said, we can't tell if a ball hit a massive wire hanging over. How is there not a video of that? Like, why didn't the replay crew look at the Skycam footage? If it shakes, the wire probably got hit. I'm just saying. And this is just the latest in a rousing round of Skycam wire conspiracies. You had the Mac Jones pass that may or may not have hit a Skycam wire earlier this season. In Week 9, the Jets and Bills, the Skycam literally fell onto the field and it delayed the game for like 15 minutes. So, and that wasn't all the technical difficulties, right? For the second week in a row, the chains got broken again. Like, the Eagles literally play in a stadium called the Link, and they cannot get chains to work. I looked at, you can go buy 10 yards of chain at Home Depot for like $100 or something. Like, I don't understand why we're still using chains in NFL games. We've got a chip in the ball. Like, and the chip is in the middle of the ball, so it could be like 6 inches off. I would rather trust that than 50-year-old men standing 20 yards away trying to see through the bodies flying around and then running in diagonally. Like, it was just crazy. But the Eagles come out and vaunted defense. You're concerned about that. And they go on an opening drive that's just methodical. And on 4th and 3, you're in field goal range. And a lot of coaches would have said, let's take our 3 points. Let's draw fresh blood against this defense. But Nick Sirianni doesn't hesitate. He goes for it on 4th down. And you get the fantastic catch, air quotes, by Devonta Smith. And he didn't bring it in, but he jumps up and he gives the signal, tapping the fists together. Let's go, hurry up, run a play. And the Eagles run the play. And it's just all the little things add up for this team. The aggressiveness on 4th down, being so well coached that there's a signal, hey, let's run up and run a play. And all 10 guys on the field see Devonta Smith do that. And we get up and run a play before it can be challenged. Like, all of those things add up, and the Eagles end up scoring the touchdown. And then the 49ers get the ball, right? And they pick up 2 first downs, and they're starting to move the ball. And then Hassan Reddick beats backup tight end Tyler Kroft, and he strip sacks Brock Purdy, and it injures him. He gets knocked out of the game. And from that point, you thought, okay, this could snowball, right? And it didn't. The Eagles offense did nothing on their next 3 possessions. And then Christian McCaffrey scores that touchdown and to tie it up, and you start to get a little nervous. But then the Eagles rip off 14 more before half, including a drive where they went for it on 4th and 1 from their own 34.
Yep.
You're playing a 4th string quarterback, and you went for it, where if you don't get it, they get a field goal for sure to take the lead. There's probably not another coach that's making that call. And Nick Sirianni makes that call, and they convert, and they end up scoring a touchdown. And so, it wasn't the strongest game offensively. There were some things that they did that I liked schematically. I would say this was Hurts' worst game of the season.
Yeah, not great.
16% of his passes were charted as inaccurate. That's the 3rd highest mark of the year for him. He had a 37% success rate on dropbacks. It wasn't a good game for Jalen Hurts passing the ball. And yet, the impact that he makes in the running game, they're able to run for nearly 150 yards against a team that only allows 70 yards rushing on the year. He still helps the offense so much, even when he's handing the ball off. You saw Fred Warner freezing on that run play to Kenny Gainwell on the outside because of the threat of Hurts. And I thought it was really interesting. They came out in a lot of 3-by-1 formations with the running back on that strong side, and they ran to the weak side. So you had to have the linebackers cheating over. If Hurts keeps this, he's got 3 receivers in front blocking, or they could run the bubble. I thought they did a really good job schematically with some of those things. And they were able to capitalize. And, all the credit in the world to Jeff Stoutland and the run game design, and Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni for having the guts to go for it in situations a lot of coaches wouldn't.
Yeah, the aggressiveness is surely what make teams great. And I know that if they don't convert that first down, we're probably singing a different tune at this point. But I feel like, so even take away the 29-yard pass to Devonta Smith, I believe it was, well, I mean, obviously it wasn't a catch, but I mean, in real time, it looked like a catch. But once you see everybody rushing up to the line of scrimmage and running, and Devontae's doing all the gestures, some people were like, it looked like a celebration. But man, if I'm Shanahan, and I get that you don't want to waste a challenge that early in the game, but I feel like you can at least afford to lose a timeout. And at that point, they have additional time to look at the play, and then maybe something different happens. Us Eagles fans, of course, are grateful. We're not mad about it. But man, if I'm a coach on the sideline and I see the urgency that the team is running up to the line of scrimmage with, I've had for mind to throw that flag just off of that alone, even before I see the replay, especially when you only got a couple angles. The catch rule is stupid anyway. So I think in any other world that's a catch, I understand. What did the ground knock it out or whatever the situation is? We're still so fuzzy on what a catch is that I still think the league has to fix it. But still a fantastic play by Devontae nonetheless. I thought it was overthrown. The fact that he even got a hand on that ball, I was stunned, to say the least.
Yeah. Shanahan should have absolutely thrown the challenge flag.
Or at least call a timeout, right? Do one or the other.
Could it be gamesmanship to get you to burn a challenge or a timeout? Sure. On such a high leverage play, 4th and 3, and it's the first half. It's not like it's the second half, right? You still got another challenge if you lose that. It's only the first half if you burn a timeout. You know how many challenges and timeouts he used that whole game? Zero. So exactly. Use it. You can't take him home. Shanahan is a really good schematic coach Monday through Saturday. He is awful in game management situations. And I talked about that on here last week, that was something that I was very confident in, is that Shanahan would cost them in game management situations and Nick Sirianni wouldn't. And we saw it play out on the first drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that even Jalen Hurts himself didn't entirely look like himself take away that pass. That's where I was headed beforehand. He had 121 yards, 29 of those were the Devontae Smith. He missed that deep throw to A.J. Brown that probably ends the game essentially at that point, and missed some other plays. He's clearly not healthy. We're never going to know how much this injury is hindering him. He's never going to allow us to know that. But what was your assessment? I don't know how much film you've watched of this game to this point, but your assessment of Jalen Hurts' performance in this game, and should we be concerned? Obviously, it's early to look at the Super Bowl to this point, but should we be concerned moving forward in this game against obviously another hindered quarterback by ankle and Patrick Mahomes? The rest should evidently help, but are you concerned at the lack how do I put the lack of production you saw from Jalen Hurts, or is it just a result of he didn't need to do a whole lot?
I think there's a little of both. Once you're onto the 4th string quarterback, and especially once you take the lead, you're going to play ultra conservative. Like, is Josh Johnson, is Brock Purdy, now that he's back in and can't throw, are they really going to put up points? You're just not concerned about it. So, but I did think there were spots, like the biggest thing to me is not inaccuracy on the passes. Obviously, he overthrew A.J. Brown on the deep ball. He overthrew Devonta Smith. The Devonta Smith, he was scrambling out to his left. It was scramble drill. Maybe he thought Smith would keep going up. Maybe it's just a bad throw because he's out on the run.
It sure did look like he overthrew him.
Yeah. And he had a couple, the A.J. Brown one that he got off of the turf. I think it was on the first drive. Well, there was a free runner through the B gap on that one. So I think some of it was situationally dependent. The thing that was more concerning to me is how uncomfortable he looked in the pocket. I thought the 49ers did a great job of rushing him. And then, the broadcast pointed it out. Greg Olson, by the way, best in the business. But he pointed out that Joey Bosa was rushing, but as soon as he got to the same depth as Hurts, he stopped and he started pushing in instead of getting upfield. He was not giving they were very dedicated to not giving Hurts a lane to run through. And I thought Hurts was a little panicky in the pocket early. And I don't know if the defense he was playing, the pass rush he was facing, got into his head a little bit there, but you could tell that he thought that he was going to have more lanes to run, and he was coming out of the back of pockets a lot. Now, some of that might be because, he wasn't able to hit receivers in rhythm like he normally is. The secondary was doing a good job too, but I thought he looked off a little bit in his pocket management in this game. Overall, it's not something I'm worried about, heading into the Super Bowl, but it was something that it was one of his worst games in terms of pocket management.
Yeah, and I'll got to give credit to the corners because leading into this game, I was like, I don't know who's going to cover these guys. You have Travarius Ward and Lenore on the other side, and they held their own, especially Ward. He held his own against A.J. Brown, had a nice breakup on Quez Watkins as well, so I got to give credit to the corners. But yeah, I think the 49ers did a good job on defense. Their defense, in fact, kept them in this game longer than they probably should have. You mentioned the 3 forced punts earlier in the game. Fred Warner was in and out. Nick Bosa was in and out. But these linebackers are fast and effective, and they can make things tough for a quarterback. So I think that once I was trying to tell people that regardless of how the 49ers number one ranked rush defense is, the Eagles are a top ranked rush offense. And I believe in 9 weeks prior, the 49ers have only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns total. The Eagles rushed for 4 in this game alone. Miles Sanders with 2, Boston Scott with 1. I would have never assumed Boston Scott's going to get an NFC Championship touchdown, but here we are. And Jalen Hurts, of course, gets 1 as well. And I think even more so than the rushing performance, I think the offensive line were probably the stars of this game. Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey put on clinics. I've seen a couple of breakdowns to this point of just how effective those guys are. And man, if the Eagles do bring it home and win this ring, it's really difficult for me to see Jason Kelsey returning, especially with Cam Jurgens in the fold. But I feel like this is the best I might have ever seen Jason Kelsey. He's turned it up a notch this season, even better than he is. And I know that's hard to do, but he just seems to be on another level this season at 35 years old. And you can't say enough good things about the effort that we've seen from the offensive line in this postseason. Lane Johnson toughing it out through the torn adductor. He knows he's had to just 3 games. I got to tough it out, and he only has 1 more to go before he goes down. He's already goes down as a legend in this city, but man, to tough it out for potentially another ring, and just the offensive line in general. I think even Siamalu doesn't get enough credit. He's a name we don't hear a whole lot, and he's been fantastic this year as well. Can't say enough good things about what we've seen from the offensive line this season from the Eagles.
Yeah, and even Jordan Mailata, which is a guy that I was concerned about in this matchup. He's been great as a run blocker. He's had a down year as a pass protector. He's allowed 1 pressure in 57 pass sets in the postseason. He's PFF's highest graded offensive tackle in the postseason. Like, he has turned it up at the right time, and the offensive line has played phenomenal. The defensive line has played phenomenal. Like, it's hard to lose games when you are just dominating the trenches that much. The Eagles pass rush pressured 49ers quarterbacks on 61.9% of their dropbacks per next gen stats. That's the 3rd highest rate of any game this season. Like, that's not supposed to happen in an NFC title game, and it did. And the defense just dominated this game. And I loved that, for all the talk about Jonathan Gannon, and I've been a big defender of Jonathan Gannon this season, but there's been lots of talk about his scheme, and his scheme is so vanilla and he doesn't change anything. And I saw some things in this game that I really liked. I thought this was the most situational game plan that he's had this season. From the jump, they came out and they sat in 5 down fronts, and they said, "You're not going to run the ball on us." And I know that makes our pass defense weaker, but if Brock Purdy can drop back and pass against us and beat us, then so be it. And I liked that move. I thought it made a lot of sense, and it worked well. And then all game, the defense was just sitting on in-breaking routes. Like, all year, the mantra has been, don't get beat deep. Just give up the underneath plays, live to play another down, because eventually we're going to get a sack. And that's not what they tried to do. Like, there's some footage out there, and I'm going to talk about this on an all 22 later. Like, James Bradbury got cooked by Brandon Ayuk 2 different times, and George Kittle once.
Oh man!
But it's not that he really got cooked. It's that I truly believe a coaching point in this game was you sit on in-breaking routes, and the 49ers were running double moves off of it. And the Eagles just said, we're fine with that, because you're not going to have time for those double moves to pay off. And they didn't, because the pass rush got home. Like, it was a huge change in philosophy for Gannon, who is normally prevent explosive plays at all costs. And in this game, he looked at QB tendencies and said, Brock Purdy throws short and intermediate middle of the field. We are selling out to stop it. And if we get burned, so be it. But I trust our pass rush will get home, and it did.
Yeah, that pass rush. I mean, you could say a lot of things about the pass rush, especially one Hassan Reddick who took the quarterbacks out of the game. So I guess now this is a good time for the rant. So for the 49ers fans who are saying that we're taking victory laps for beating a 4th string quarterback. Shane, answer me. Were both quarterbacks healthy? The Eagles starting quarterback and the 49ers starting quarterback, both quarterbacks were healthy at the start of the game, correct?
Ish. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, as healthy as you can be.
Sure, yeah.
At this point in the season,
Yeah, Brock Purdy didn't trip getting off the bus and hurt
nobody
himself.
contracted like COVID midweek. Nobody like rolled an ankle in practice and is banged up. None of this happened. Both quarterbacks were as ready as you could be for this game. Is protecting your quarterback a part of the game plan? Yes.
It is, yeah.
It should be. It should be a part of the game plan. So for the Eagles to take advantage of a matchup, Tyler Kroft, I didn't even know that was the guy that was blocking Hassan Reddick because I didn't care enough to know the tight end's name. I just knew it was a tight end. When you have that guy blocking a premier edge rusher who is amongst the league leader in sacks and pressure and QB hits, how do you allow that to happen? If you want your quarterback to play the entire game, you should do your best to protect that guy and keep him in the game. In addition to all these people that are saying that the Eagles had the easiest path to the Super Bowl, the Eagles are beating anybody in the NFC, regardless of who you put in front of them. The Giants, they obviously beat the Vikings, the Seahawks, the 49ers. Who could you have put in front of the Eagles that would have deemed you to say, yes, that's a good path to the Super Bowl? The Eagles are beating all of these teams because the disparity in talent is so great that it doesn't matter who they would have faced. They would have beaten down anybody. And the whole purpose of getting the number one seed is to give yourself a favorable road to the Super Bowl. So I don't want to hear about easiest path, easiest road. You bust your ass all season long to give yourself that easiest possible path to the Super Bowl. So now that the Eagles are here, everybody's trying to discredit it. I don't understand it. Hassan Reddick did his job. You hate to see the kid go down. We would have loved to see what Brock Purdy would have been able to do. I know the 49ers have a lot of questions. They need to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. This game just leaves a lot of unanswered questions for them. Yes, you would have liked to see a better matchup. Nobody wants to try and see Christian McCaffrey launch a ball to nobody. You don't want to see Josh Johnson come in. I understand all these things. But at the end of the day, the Eagles did what they had to do to win the game. You move on. And that's where we're at. I know years ago when Carson Wentz got knocked out of it, nobody was screaming. I don't remember getting any sympathy when Carson Wentz went down with that concussion. Nobody said, oh, it's a shame. You know, we feel bad for the guy. They made jokes. They made memes. They said, oh, he's injury prone. They did all of this stuff while Josh McCown was running around on a torn hamstring and still almost won the game. So I really have no sympathy for the 49ers fans. It sucks for the kid. I feel for the kid and Brock Purdy, and now he has to, go through the 6-month torn UCL rehab and all that stuff. But as far as sympathy from other fan bases, I do not care how you get to the Super Bowl. Just get there and deal with it. That was a long-winded thing.
Yeah, a lot I want to respond to there. But I'm going to start with this. His name is Hassan Reddick, right? Hassan of House Reddick, rightful heir to Defensive Player of the Year, destroyer of worlds, the pass rusher of the great NFC East, the king of strip sacks, and unfortunately in this game, the breaker of quarterbacks. He hits Brock Purdy and you get the injury. And then they leave him unblocked again later in the game for a free run on Josh Johnson.
Like, why? I do not understand.
Yeah. But, I mean, obviously, I feel bad in that moment for 49ers players, for the fans, because we remember 2019 when Carson Wentz, the cheap shot from Jadeveon Clowney, and that one was a cheap shot. This was not. It's a football play.
Exactly.
But I remember how I felt watching Josh Johnson in that game. That sucks. It sucks for your season to end that way. And so I do hate that. I wish Purdy had played the whole game. The notion that they would have won if he had, though, like it was his third drop back of the game and he turned the ball over. Like the Eagles were not scared of that. They were not scared of Brock Purdy playing the whole game. And we'll never know what would have happened, but I got a pretty good idea based on
the Eagles were winning regardless.
Yeah, I got a pretty good idea based on how the Eagles ran the ball and how they rushed the passer that game. It is what it is. And you talk about an easy path to the Super Bowl. First of all, that's why you get the 1 seed. So you play one less game and you play the easiest team left every step of the way. But let's talk about another 1 seed in the Kansas City Chiefs. Victor, how much better are the Kansas City Chiefs than the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Very much so. Very much so. The Jacksonville Jaguars shouldn't even have been there. They just had the crazy comeback against the Chargers, but very in a different tier than the Jaguars altogether.
And it was a 7-point game.
Mm-hmm.
Because postseason games are tough no matter who you play. The Eagles have won back-to-back playoff games by 24-plus points. So the first team to do that since 1989.
And because we do that, we get frowned upon because we beat down our opponents so badly. It made it look easy, and people think it's if both these games were 3 7-point games, it'd be a different tune. Be like, oh, they really eked it out. The fact that we dominated these opponents make people say it's an easy path. I find it hard to believe that. I really do.
Yeah, and people throwing out the soft schedule thing, right? You had a soft schedule this year. That's why you got the 1 seed. The Eagles are 9-1 this year against teams with winning records. They played in the toughest division in football. 9-1 against teams with winning records is the best in history. Easy schedule by what metric? By win percentage.
By the eye test.
Yeah. By win percentage, 9 teams had an easier schedule, including the Chiefs and the 49ers. By ESPN's Football Power Index, 9 teams had an easier schedule, including the 49ers. By DVOA, the 49ers, the Chiefs, and the Eagles were all bottom 4 teams. It's almost as if, and follow me here, it's almost as if winning all of your games makes your opponent's records worse. I know that's earth-shattering, but good teams have weak strength of schedule because they hand everybody they play a loss, and that impacts things. Like, you can't, this is not Alabama playing Southern Louisiana Tech. These are NFL football teams. These are professional athletes. There is no easy schedule in the NFL. Like, you can make that argument in October when you're trying to do your power rankings. You can't make that argument when you're talking about a Super Bowl team.
It just doesn't ring true. It gives off sore loser energy, and I just don't understand it. And again, Hassan Reddick is the guy that knocked him out. Try and block that guy if you want to keep your starting quarterback in the game. Shane, I have 2 players here. I'm gonna read to you, and you tell me which one should be Defensive Player of the Year. These are 2022 stats, including the regular season and the playoffs. Player A, 18.5 sacks, 39 QB hits, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery. Player B, 19.5 sacks, 30 QB hits, 6 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries. Which player, in your estimation, deserves Defensive Player of the Year?
That's player B.
And,
obviously.
And let me tell you another thing. Player A has been shut out of sacks in all 3 playoff games that they played in. Not a single sack Nick Bosa had in the playoff game. This is your Defensive Player of the Year. This guy that had 1 QB hit and 0 sacks in the postseason. Hassan Reddick is on a tear.
While we're on awards here, too, by the way, Nick Sirianni ends the year not being one of the final 3 Coach of the Year finalists. It's Doug Peterson, it is Brian Daboll, and it is Kyle Shanahan. And by the way, if you look at preseason over-under win totals, you say the Eagles have a loaded roster, whatever. No team won more games above their win total than the Eagles. So don't say that this was expected. But besides all that, he goes 5-0 against those Coach of the Year finalists. 5-0. He beat all 3 of those guys that combined 5 times, didn't lose a game. Very reminiscent of 2017 when Doug Peterson lost the award to Sean McVay, who he beat en route to his Super Bowl. And let's talk about Comeback Player of the Year, too.
Mm-hmm.
Comeback Player of the Year, you got Brandon Graham, tore his Achilles at 33 years old. And he comes back in his 34-year-old season, and he has 11 sacks, a career high, double-digit sacks. He's not even a finalist. Instead, we have Geno Smith, who is coming back from being a bad football player, Christian McCaffrey, who's coming back from a strained hamstring, Saquon Barkley, who's coming back from a sprained ankle, and Jared Goff, who missed 2 total games last year with a knee injury. Brandon Graham's not even a finalist.
Geno Smith came back from the bench, like you said, came back from being terrible. Coming back from being bad at football does not warrant a comeback player. Great story. I'm not discrediting Geno. I love Geno Smith personally. He's a W guy. I like what he's done this year. This is why I believe there needs to be a Most Improved award. Most Improved award, he far and away deserves that. Comeback. What did he come back from? Adversity? Is that what it is? Adversity? He can't. I can't. I don't get it. Brandon Graham definitely deserves to be in that conversation. You know how hard it is to come back from an Achilles injury at our age, Shane. I'm late 20s. I don't know how old you are, but I know in the mid 30s it's probably rough. It's probably rough to come back from a ruptured Achilles, maintain that burst off the line of scrimmage, and still pursue professional quarterbacks and offensive linemen. It's not easy to do. I mean, people really need to sit and think about the things that this Eagles defensive line is doing between Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, who got in Trent Williams' face after he did what he did. Mind you, what is the purpose? How much does Kayvon Wallace weigh? What is he like 175? What is Trent Williams 320? What is the point? What are we doing here? What kind of poor sportsmanship? I see Niners fans complaining about, oh, Philly was rough and the link was rough and they were intense and I don't think I'm gonna go back. Talk to your players who are literally throwing guys half their size around the field for no reason whatsoever. This is ridiculous. That was a very, very poor act of sportsmanship, and that's from a guy that I enjoy watching, and Trent Williams. I expect better from him.
Yeah, that's like I said, I felt bad for 49ers fans, but when Dre Greenlaw throws 3 punches at the ball after you can clearly hear the whistles.
And that wasn't just punching, that was like haymakers. Like
when Trent Williams throws Kevon Wallace down well after a whistle, I start to no longer feel bad for your players at all. And then with the incessant whining that's gone on social media, I don't really feel bad for fans anymore either. But
it's bad, man. They're approaching like Dallas fans, like Saints fans used to be whiners for a while. Like this 49ers fans are a lot of people are like, oh, they're parading about beating a team with no quarterback. And I'm trying to tell people like, dude, we did this. And people paraded around us when they beat Josh McCown on a torn hamstring. And there was no sympathy for that. So I just don't get the easiest path things. When we beat the quote unquote the red hot Giants, people were saying the Giants were going to come in here and upset us, and they beat the Vikings, and the Eagles aren't ready, and all of this. And then we beat down the best defense in football. And last I checked, Brock Purdy doesn't play defense. You ran up and down a defense that has allowed 3 rushing touchdowns over the last 9 weeks, and you gave them 4 of them and over 100 yards on the ground. It wasn't a crazy dominant performance on the ground, but it was enough to get it done. And because of that, the Eagles are the last NFC team standing and on the way to the Super Bowl. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. That's end of story. Send tweet, publish the show. Eagles are going to the Super Bowl because they were the best team in the NFC.
And it's that easy.
Entire season.
It's that easy. Did you like Christian McCaffrey's pass attempt? His launch 50 yards down.
I was wondering, how's that not intentional grounding? I mean,
they were just trying to whatever they were doing. And there was some late hits going around, and there was some all this. Oh, one more quick thing about this game before I let you put a bow on it. Is Kenneth Gainwell on par with or better than Corey Clement in 2017? Because I'm seeing a lot of comparisons. Where do you lie on that?
It's been kind of crazy. Like, he's a guy that I didn't really want the ball in his hands much during the year because good things didn't really happen that much. And he had a really good game against the Giants. He did a good job in this game. One of the things I thought the Eagles did well was targeting him real quick on checkdowns because the Niners linebackers were dropping so deep. And, he made that one catch off the turf, made 2 linebackers miss. He's played exceptionally well. And it gives me a lot of confidence in him moving forward into next year and beyond. Now, obviously, we had a lot of confidence in Corey Clement too, and that never panned out. So hopefully this isn't just a flash in the pan, but he's looked really good the last few weeks.
Yeah, especially carrying the football. And we know that he's the passing back on most downs, but he's been turning it up in the postseason at the right time. So let's hope. I hope this doesn't make Philadelphia think like when the offseason comes around and they look at the playoff tape and they say, you know what, we don't need Miles Sanders. We're going to use Kenneth Gainwell as our 3 down back. Hopefully they're not thinking that. I'm a bit higher on paying Miles Sanders than you are. I know we had that talk last episode, but that's something we'll look into in the offseason. Any other final points? Not a whole lot to really touch on. This game it was tough for Debo, Kittle, any of those guys to really get anything going. Kittle was obviously frustrated after the game, but he talked a big game beforehand, and that's what's going to happen. Kenneth Gainwell gave you 48 yards on the ground. Miles Sanders gave you 42 and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts gave you 39. Boston Scott gave you 21. And I will say before I let you wrap it up, Shane, Gardner Minshew got NFC Championship snaps before Dak Prescott. So hey, take that, Dallas fans. They can take that for what it's worth. Like,
oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Maybe they should trade for him.
Yes, that'd be nice. They just said this morning that all their confidence is in Dak Prescott. But did you see the Cowboys' Twitter like after that loss? What's going on? Their interns are on one, man. They're throwing everybody under the bus. It is wild. Shout out to we will give a shout out to D'Amico Ryans, head coach for the Texans. Right, loved him when he was here. We just had to beat him. I think he coached a fairly good game, but your hands are kind of tied when you don't have a quarterback that can throw a forward pass, obviously. But I think he's going to be good for Houston. Has a lot of ties there. I think he's just the guy that can kind of turn that franchise around.
Yeah, and early speculation is that he might have Brian Johnson, the Eagles QB coach, pegged to be his offensive coordinator. So
hell of a stat.
we'll see what transpires there. It does seem like the Eagles might retain both Steichen and Gannon. Gannon said after the game that he's here to stay. And then, of course, Steichen was associated with both the Texans and the Broncos, who both have head coaches now. So in Sean Payton and DeMeco Ryan. So it looks like we could be trending towards running it back with the same play callers next year.
You're a little too happy. You're a little too happy about that. No, I'm kidding. Jonathan Gannon is a good coach. I think he's good. I think he was the better defensive coordinator in this game, to be honest, as much as I love DeMeco. So I think there's a better chance now that Steichen goes somewhere. He's still in the mix for the Colts. I think Frank Reich is gone. Obviously, I think it would be ironic how Steichen goes to that team and we maintain the relationship with the Colts that the Eagles have. But if you can retain both coordinators, that obviously bodes well. Gannon might have a tougher job next season because he might have, 5-6 different starters next year, the way this offseason list is looking. So that's obviously something. But yeah, Gannon's been good this year for all the flack he gets. And I know people want him to be more aggressive and he's got to blitz and you got to do all this. But he's been good and he's led a championship defense, franchise record setting sack defense. And you can't ask for much more there. Anything else on this game that kind of we had our rants, we had our recaps for what it's worth. We hope Jalen Hurts is okay. That arm isn't bothering him, isn't too much. And Lane Johnson got to tough it out for one more game. Just a masterful monster performance he's put on thus far in the playoffs.
Yeah, nothing specific on this game. Although I've been working on a project. So, the question always goes, the question's going around now, like which team is better, this team or the 2017 team and things like that. But I've been working on a project with DVOA data. So if any of our listeners are not familiar with DVOA data, it stands for Defense Adjusted Value Over Average. It basically grades out every play and it standardizes it to the league average. And it basically says how much better or worse is this passing offense than league average? How much better or worse is this run defense than league average? And they actually do this like for a ton of years. It goes back pre-2000. I only went back to 2000, but so I've got all the data for the Eagles team since 2000 to now. So let's play a little game here.
Let's play roster,
a little game. Yeah, all everyone. Right. So let's play a little game, Victor. Let's do offense first. Where do you think out of those 23 years, where do you think this year's passing offense ranks out of 23?
Where do I think this passing offense ranks? So I feel like the only one that remotely can compete are the ones that had Sean Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. But is this offense better? It has to be the best because this is the first time. Is this the first time ever in franchise history that the Eagles have had 2,000-yard receivers? You can kind of count the Zach Ertz when he set the franchise record for receptions, I believe. So you got to factor in tight ends, but I will say that because I don't think the Super Bowl year, I think Ertz was the only 1,000-yard player. I don't think Alshon and all them even hit 1,000 yards. So I'll say this year's first. It has to be.
This year is actually sixth.
Oh,
it ranks sixth at plus 23.9%. So 23.9% above league average. First place went to the 2006 Eagles passing attack. And second place was that 2017 team. So now keep in mind, because you were going to like the number of 1,000-yard receivers, it's all adjusted to like value over average. So it weights in efficiency a lot as well. So out of the last 23 years, sixth best passing offense that the Eagles have had. So now let's talk about this rushing attack. Where do you think this rushing attack ranks out of the last 23 years for the Eagles?
All right. So I think back to the Deuce. They had Deuce, Buckhalter, and Westbrook. Was that trio ever a thing? So they might have had those three running around. They were very dominant on the ground in 2017. So I'll say this year, I'll give them, because they weren't like a very dominant rushing defense in the 2000s when I was growing up. I'll give 17
rushing offense. Rushing offense,
right, rushing offense. And they weren't like crazy, running the ball when I'm growing up, as far as I can remember. Of course, LaShawn McCoy was around. I'll give the edge to like two of the McCoy years and the 17 year, because LeGarrette Blount and all them were running crazy. So I'll give them fourth for this season.
Fifth, pretty close.
All right.
First was 2003. Second place was 2007. Actually, the 2017 team is 19th on that list.
Oof,
so it was not a very efficient rushing team, as much as we loved the LeGarrette Blount grinding out
he was running over everybody.
Yeah. So let's talk about their rushing defense now. Where do you think their rushing defense ranks out of the last 23 years for Eagles teams?
Yeah, it has to be like in the middle, because they've always, like, those Jim Johnson defenses, and they've always been good in the trenches because Andy Reid instilled that into the organization when he showed up. So I will say that they are about, and they weren't even number one this year. They were number one last year, but not this year. So I'll give them 12th for this season.
They're actually 22nd.
Yeah, I knew they couldn't be up there. They had to be further on the list.
It's the second worst rushing defense, that the Eagles have had since the year 2000. And so then we'll end up, well, I'll give you the total one too, but let's talk passing defense. Where do you think this passing defense ranks?
So let's see, Bobby and Troy. So you got to give time to when Lito and Sheldon and Dawkins and Michael Lewis were here. They had to be. I don't know the stats offhand of how good they were, but that had to be up there. But this passing defense was number one for a majority of the year, if not all year. So I'll say they're top 5. I will give them 3rd, only because I feel like the years when Lito, Sheldon, and Dawkins were here, and Michael Lewis, they had to be up there. And when Bobby and Troy were here, I would like to think that they were locking down receivers as well. So I will say they are top 5. I'll give them 3rd. Sounds too high. I'll give them 5th.
They were actually 2nd, so it's the second best. The best was 2008. This was the second best. So pretty stout defense.
The best was 08. What was their roster at that time?
That is a good question. I don't have the answer to.
I got you. I'll pull it up. Go ahead. I'll pull it up in the meantime.
Okay, while you're pulling that up, so now that all gets coalesced together into your total team DVOA. This is how we could guess, what is the best team that the Eagles have had in the last 23 years in terms of efficiency. Where do you think this year's team ranks?
Well, passing defense really pegged them down there. So I'll say out of all the teams, the 20th, I will say they are overall the 6th best. I'll give them 6, just outside the top 5.
They are number 5. Number 5.
So close.
Behind 08, 09, 01, and 06. And I think a big portion of that's probably the inefficiency of garbage time play, which they had a lot of this year. So to answer everyone's question, who is better, the 2017 or the 2022 team? The 2022 team's total DVOA was 25.2%. 2017 is 23.7%. So about a 2.5% difference. Here's my raw data. If you guys are interested in that sort of thing, if you're watching on YouTube, you can check it out. Here it is by year and kind of color coded. I'm going to tweet this out later though, so you don't have to be watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcasting apps later, you can check this out and you can actually filter it by any team you want. But that was a fun little project I was working on today. I thought I'd share. So overall, really, really good team. Surprisingly, efficiency wise, not even a top 3 Eagles team in the last 23 years, though, for what that's worth.
The 2008 defensive depth chart, as far as secondary is concerned, was Asante Samuel, Sheldon Brown, Quentin Michael, and Brian Dawkins. So not too shabby. Not too shabby.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome roster.
That's pretty solid. One other topic I wanted to hit on, because I had just mentioned him, was Andy Reid. And I'm sitting here, there's so many storylines going into the Super Bowl that we'll touch on in the coming weeks between the Kelce's and Jalen Hurts against the guy who took the MVP from him and the Andy Reid Bowl and all this whole thing. But I'm seeing people not like dragging Andy Reid, but like, I guess I'll say disrespecting Andy Reid. Like, so for me, I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s era when Andy Reid was all I knew. I fell in love with the Eagles when it was McNabb and Andy Reid. That's all I knew as far as the Eagles football. And people are saying, why should we respect him? He didn't win anything here. But from what I've heard from the people I've spoke to that were around prior to Andy Reid, is that the Eagles are relevant because of Andy Reid. And obviously 4 NFC championship games, the most winning coach in franchise history to this point. And I just feel like for everything he did for the franchise, and it wasn't like he had to leave because he was a poor coach. It was just it soured and it was time to go in a different direction. For the people that say he didn't win anything here, why should we feel for the guy. Allen Iverson didn't win anything here, and we love him to death. Brian Dawkins didn't win anything here. We obviously love him to death. And Andy Reid, as far as I'm concerned, he does owe us a Super Bowl, and he's probably going to give it to us in 2 weeks. But I don't understand the hate for him. I have nothing but love for Andy Reid because he's one of the reasons why I love Eagles football so much. So I'm curious on which side of the fence you stand on as far as the Andy Reid love hate. Is it forget him? He sold the bag. His time management costed us a ring. I've nothing for him, or are you appreciative of what he was able to do during his tenure in Philadelphia?
I love Andy Reid.
And how can you say anything else? How can you say anything else?
I root for the Chiefs in every game they play except for this one. Like I love Andy Reid. Now, when Andy Reid was near the end of his time here, I thought it was time for him to go. You can only stay in one place so long before sort of that monotony sets in, and you need new ideas and things. So I was ready. I knew it was time for Reid to go. I didn't harbor any ill will, but I wanted Reid to go. And I was going to root for him wherever he ended up. I just thought his time was up in Philly. I love Andy Reid. There's no tainted legacy there for me. There's a lot of great coaches that weren't able to get it done somewhere. I love Reid to death.
Yeah, as do I. I was just curious on why I saw certain fans like, I don't understand the love for Reid. He didn't win anything here, blah blah blah. I love that man to death, and he did a lot of good for Philadelphia. Obviously, he's going to have to go down in a couple weeks. But nothing but good thoughts and memories I have from that. Fun fact: while I'm sitting here staring at this 2008 roster, you know who was on the depth chart at defensive tackle? Monte Reager. That's an interesting. Jalen Reagor's father was
Seriously?
on the Eagles roster. Oh wait, I'm staring at it, and I've been staring at it like, wow, he really was on this team. So that's a fun little tidbit there. Anything else you want to touch on for this game? I think I've gotten all my anger and hatred and rants for the 49ers fan base and everybody that's hating on us. And the Eagles, by the way, are in their third Super Bowl since 1996. How many Dallas got? How many NFC championships do they have, let alone Super Bowls? Yeah, big zero.
They haven't even been to an NFC championship.
Exactly. And everybody screams like, "Oh, you're in the Super Bowl, still talking about Dallas." Yes, I will drag them in any chance I get. I don't care. It's fine with me. But any other rants, jokes, anything you gotta get off before we get off here?
So let's talk MVP for just a second. Mahomes is going to win the MVP, right? He's minus 750 right now. He's going to win it. We pretty well know that. It won't be announced for another week and a half, but assuming he wins it, Victor, do you know when the last time a MVP won the Super Bowl was?
And a league MVP that won the Super Bowl? I don't know.
1999.
Okay.
Kurt Warner did it. So if Mahomes wins the MVP, we can just hope it continues the long-standing tradition of MVPs not winning the Super Bowl. I would take that. 9 times since the year 2000, the MVP has made the Super Bowl, and they lost all 9 times. Do you know what the most recent example of an MVP making the Super Bowl and losing was?
Right. I don't know why Aaron Rodgers keeps coming to mind. Who was it?
2017, a guy named Tom Brady won the MVP award, and he met the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And obviously, we all know the rest of that history. So assuming Mahomes wins, the Eagles will try to prevent an MVP from winning the Super Bowl for the second time in a row. It happened in 2017. It's going to happen in 2022 or 2022 season. So let's just keep that streak alive.
Yeah, that would be good, especially as we all know by now, it's the first Super Bowl with 2 black quarterbacks facing off. So that's also history. Jalen Hurts' agent, Nicole Lynn, is the first black female agent to represent a quarterback in the Super Bowl. So no short storylines for this Super Bowl. You can write it up any way you can between the Kelseys and Andy Reid and the MVPs going at it and 2 black quarterbacks going at it for the first time in history. It's going to be a fun show in Arizona. Both of these teams actually won in Arizona earlier in the year, so this is going to be each of them are looking for their second win at a State Farm Stadium. The patches look pretty cool too. I'm kind of sad they're not wearing the black. I figured they wouldn't be, but I had hope. But the midnight green with the patches, have you seen them? They look pretty dope.
Yeah, it looks pretty awesome. One other one that you're talking about there, the storylines. Jalen Hurts would also become, in my opinion at least, the first true dual threat quarterback to win a Super Bowl if he wins. I mean, Mahomes has one. I wouldn't
Russell Wilson count? Does Russell Wilson count?
Yeah, that's the one I was going to give as a caveat. Like Mahomes, I wouldn't count as a dual threat. Like he's an improviser, he's a scrambler, right? You have Russell Wilson. Maybe you want to count him. I don't know if you think in terms of rushing, like Russell Wilson has never had like a 600-yard rushing season.
Right.
He won it in 2013. Oh no, I take that back. He had a 800-yard rushing season in 2014. So maybe you would count Russell Wilson in that. I'm not sure, but if you don't count Russell Wilson as a true dual threat, I kind of consider him more of an improvising type guy as well.
Yeah.
You're splitting hairs at that point, but he would be the first true like running quarterback. I mean, Cam didn't win his. He was kind of that running quarterback, and it's a newer breed. Lamar hasn't won one, so he's got the chance to be the first of that kind of archetype that would win the Super Bowl.
And then we could finally get off the topic that that dual threat quarterbacks aren't sustainable, and now we can stop. We could start saying stop drafting these pocket statues. And then I feel like the game is changing anyway. I feel like the game is moving towards more like hybrid quarterbacks, guys who are mobile, guys who can run the RPO, and putting that in motion. And people are going to look at Jalen Hurts and say maybe our guy can do that. Chicago's moving forward with Justin Fields. I saw that this morning. They're going to hope they can do some similar things that Jalen Hurts has done in this season, but can't say enough great things about just the season in general. What a fun year it's been. I feel like it just started and now it's almost at an end already. I'm almost sad because at the end of this, a lot of these guys aren't going to be here. And this team is special. It's going to go down in history, regardless of the outcome in the Super Bowl. We obviously feel like that they're going to win it all, but regardless of the outcome, just the memories and the things that this team has been able to do. AJ Brown's first season in a Super Bowl. And just Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, stoic expressions of knowing the job's not finished. That Alabama mindset carries over into the pros. And just thinking back to just the draft day reactions to Jalen Hurts and what is going on here and how are we how does this make sense? You just handed Carson Wentz his wild contract, and now we have another guy that's going to come in here and potentially challenge him for that spot after a concussion. It didn't make sense for a lot of reasons, and now we're here, and the guy's leading us to a Super Bowl and a potential MVP candidate. Shane, any last not last words, but final thoughts? Any final thoughts on just the season in general? It's coming to a head now, and it flew by. I feel like I was just at the home opener, and we're about to watch this Super Bowl, and we've been doing just from a content creation standpoint and as a fan standpoint. I started doing this stuff around the Double Doink era. So I didn't know what it was like to cover the team, when they won the championship. This has been some of the best fun anybody could have. Yeah,
in 2016, I was running a Facebook group that had 15 people in it, writing stuff in it about the Eagles. And in 2017, they're like, you should start a blog or something because your stuff's pretty good. So I started a blog, and I blogged through the Eagles Super Bowl season in 2017 and into 2018 and 2019. It was just a little thing I did when COVID hit. I reached out to Vince Gwynn. He was starting a website called The Spark, and I went to go write about the NFL for him.
I remember those days. That was a minute ago.
Yeah, and he sent me to the Painted Lines to do Eagles stuff. And so, I did Eagles writing for 2020, which was a dreadful season, but I was writing like one article a week. And then in 2021, I started podcasting. And now in 2022, it's been podcasting for BGN and for the Painted Lines and for my own podcast and doing all 22. And it's just ramped up incredibly, but it's been a phenomenal season. It's been a lot of fun. Like, just remember, these seasons don't come around all the time. Eagles fans might feel a little spoiled. It's twice in 5 years, but these seasons don't come around all the time. So enjoy it, live in that moment. Definitely appreciate all of you listeners, everybody that makes this possible. What Victor and I do is not fun if people don't click and if people don't listen and if people don't interact. So really appreciate you guys coming along on the journey with us. And we'll be back next week. We'll do a big Super Bowl preview podcast, and then we'll be back the week after to celebrate a Super Bowl win. And then we'll figure out what we're doing in the off season, but it's going to be a fun ride. You guys buckle up, enjoy the next 2 weeks. I'm going to be having a lot of sleepless nights thinking about Patrick Mahomes, to be honest.
Yeah, it's going to be popping bottles all camera if we if we win that. And also a big thanks to Bleeding Green Nation for allowing Shane and I to join you guys every single week and allow us to provide you guys with the coverage and the reactions and just talking with you guys about this beloved Eagles team. Be sure to subscribe to BGN Radio on all pod platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Leave those reviews, rate 5 stars. All of them are very, very important. Thank you guys for doing that. Follow me, Victor Williams, on all social platforms at The Philly Pod. Do the same for Shane at @halfandhalf_TPL. Be sure to find his link tree so you can find the links to all the podcasts, the writing, the especially the YouTube channel, the home of everything, the all 22 breakdowns, everything else he provides you guys to help you better understand how special this Eagles team is. So be sure to go ahead, subscribe to that channel before he gets too big and doesn't respond to any of you. So that's going to be the case there. We'll join you guys next week, like Shane said, for the preview of the Super Bowl show. But until the end, we will catch you guys on the next one. Peace out, guys.
Go Birds.